Now, warm-blooded animals, animal species which have a relatively higher body temperature, examples mammals and birds. Cold-blooded animals, animals which cannot regulate their internal body temperature with the change in environment, examples reptiles, insects, amphibians, fish, etc. Now, stenothermal animals, an animal that is capable of living only at a certain temperature or within a very narrow range of temperatures. Examples would be reptiles, crustacean, insects, penguin, crocodile, python, etc. Euthermal animals, animals which have been able to tolerate a wide range of temperature levels. Examples cat, dog, man, tiger. Estivation is this a state of animal dormancy which is characterized by inactivity and a lowered metabolic rate and is entered in response to high temperatures and arid conditions. Hibernation is a state of animal dormancy characterized by inactivity and a lowered metabolic rate that is entered in response to low temperatures. Examples bear, bats, rodents. Agroforestry is an integrated approach of interactive benefits from combining trees and shrubs with crops and livestock. Ecotopes, smallest ecological distinct landscape features in a landscape mapping and classification system. Ecozones are large areas of Earth's surface within which organisms have been evolving in relative isolation over a long period of time. Ecozones are separate from one another by geographic features like oceans, broad deserts, or high mountain ranges that constitute barriers to migration. Carrying capacity of an environment is the maximum population size of a biological species the given environment can sustain, considering the food, habitat, water, and other resources available. Ocean deoxygenation, a term used to describe the expansion of oxygen minimum zones in the world's ocean as a consequence of anthropogenic emissions of carbon dioxide. Bioterrorism, terrorism involving international intentional release and dissemination of biological agents. Bioleaching, extraction of specific metals from their ores through the use of living organisms. Bioprospecting. Bioprospecting means exploring natural sources for small molecules, macromolecules, biomolecules, biochemicals, and genetic information that has the potential to be developed into commercially valuable products for agriculture, aquaculture, bioremediation, cosmetics, nanotechnology, or pharmaceutical industry. Biopiracy, theft of genetic material, especially plants and other biological materials, by patent process. Biopiracy is a practice where indigenous knowledge of nature originating with indigenous people is used by others for profit without authorization or compensation to the indigenous people themselves. Ecological footprint, measure of human demand on Earth's ecosystem. Carbon footprint, measure of all greenhouse gases we individually produce in units of tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. A carbon footprint is made up of the following two parts: primary and secondary footprint. Primary footprints measure our direct emissions of carbon dioxide like burning of fossil fuels, etc. Secondary footprint includes the measure of indirect carbon dioxide emissions from the whole life cycle of the products we use. Moving on to carbon diet, reducing the impact of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emission without lowering the standard of living. That is carbon dieting. Biocapacity, capacity of an area to provide resources and absorb waste. Global hectare, measure of biocapacity of the entire Earth. Earth Hour, it is a global event organized by World Wildlife Fund and is held on the last Saturday of March annually, asking households and businesses to turn off their non-essential lights and other electrical appliances for 1 hour to raise awareness on the need to take action on climate change. Earth Overshoot Day, the day when humanity's demand for ecological resources like fish and forest and services in a given year exceeds what Earth can replenish in that year. Alliance for Small Island States, OASIS, is an ad hoc coalition of low-lying and island countries. These nations are highly vulnerable to rising sea level and share common position on climate change. So these are the islands: Caribbean region, Ames region, and Pacific region. Now moving on to coalition of rainforest nations, a voluntary group of largely developing nations with rainforest which addresses issues surrounding environmental sustainability specific to rainforests. Fugitive fuel emissions, greenhouse gases which are emitted as a byproduct or waste or lost in the process of fuel production. Storage or transportation, such as methane given off during oil and gas drilling and refining, etc. Hot air, concerns that some government will be able to meet their targets of greenhouse emissions under the Kyoto Protocol with minimal efforts and could then flood the market with emission credits, thus reducing the incentive for other countries to cut off their own domestic emissions. Registries or register system. These are electronic databases that track all transactions under the Kyoto Protocol's greenhouse gas emission trading system. Spillover effects. Reverberations in developing countries caused by actions taken by developed countries to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Umbrella Group, a loose coalition of non-European Union developed countries formed following the adoption of Kyoto Protocol. International Standards in Environment, ISO 14000 environmental management standards exist to help organizations minimize how their operations negatively affect the environment and to enable them to comply with applicable laws, regulations, and other environmentally oriented requirements. Certification is performed by a third-party organization rather than being awarded by ISO directly and is based on process of how a product is produced rather than the product itself. Bioassay. Bioassay is a test in which organisms are used to detect the presence or effect of any other physical factors, chemical factors, or any other type of ecological disturbance. Bioassays are very common in pollution studies. Now, flagship species are species chosen to represent an environmental cause, such as an ecosystem in need of conservation. These species are chosen for their attractiveness, vulnerability, distinctiveness, or order to engender support and acknowledgement from public at large. Now moving on to keystone species, a species which when added or lost from an ecosystem causes major change in occurrence or at least one other species. Keystone species are important from conservation point of view because conservation of keystone species encourage conservation of all other relevant species associated with it. All top predators like lions are considered as keystone species, also elephants. Now indicator species, animal, plant or microorganism used to monitor changes in environment, example amphibians indicate chemical, global warming and air pollution. Lichens are indicator of air quality and are sensitive to sulfur dioxide. Foundation species, these are the dominant primary producers in an ecosystem, both in terms of abundance and influence, example kelp and corals. Umbrella species, these are wide-ranging species whose requirement include those of many other species. The protection of umbrella species automatically extends protection to other species. Now, Chipko movement, it is a socio-economical movement that utilized the Gandhian method of non-violent resistance through act of hugging trees in order to protect them from falling. The first recorded event of Chipko took place in Khejarli village, Jodhpur district in 1730 AD, when Bishnois led by Amrita Devi sacrificed their lives while protecting Khejri trees. However, the modern Chipko movement started in early 1970s in Garhwal Himalayas of Uttarakhand, aiming to grow awareness among rapid deforestation. A Picco movement, the Chipko movement in Uttarakhand inspired the villages of Karnataka to launch a similar movement to save their own forests. National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems. Now, NPCA is a single program for conservation of both lakes and wetlands. It is centrally sponsored scheme under the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. The plan was formulated in 2015 by merging the National Lake Conservation Plan and National Wetland Conservation Program. Now, the National Wetlands Development Board was set up in 1985 with objectives of formulating nodal policies, plans, and programs for management and development of wastelands in the country. The board comes under the Ministry of Rural Development. That'll be it.